So now that you've got your data files and you put them into a raw data folder, you want to be able to add more data files, yet not duplicate rows in your summary table, so that every time you get a raw data file, you could just put it into a file called raw data, and then your query goes in there and it finds the most recent Excel file, and then it appends new rows, not duplicating all the old ones. So that's what we're going to look at now.
So, however I'm getting my data into this folder and path, which is in the demonstration file, it doesn't really matter, but for purposes of pulling in what we were doing before, if I am in the field and I have a logbook that has this QR code taped on the inside cover like we developed in the previous video, that opens up a form on my phone. I fill out the form, even including the numeric values for flow rate of the instrument and flow rate of the standard. And then, and this may be weeks later, you've done a bunch of these checks, then you download the data, and in this case, I've set up Microsoft Edge to be the place where I go for my free Outlook.com account, but we can also do this in Google Sheets. So I go to my Outlook account and then I go all the way up at the top left is this app launcher grid. I click there and then I navigate to forms and then I find my QC form. I click here and now I see that there have been 13 responses. So I go here and now I've set up Microsoft Edge so that it saves it in my raw data file. So I say save as, and it automatically, because I've set up Edge to do this, and this is the only reason I'm using Edge so that I don't get any of my data confused and I don't have to open it. It automatically saves to this path. I click save. And now, how do I get that data into a form that ultimately gives me a nice chart like this and just appends the new rows? So to do that, I go to Data, Get Data, and I use this From File menu item, but I go down to From Folder. And now what Excel does is it says, okay, where's this folder? And I say, this is what I want. I'm always going to be putting my data into this raw data folder in this directory on my C drive, C data, and then for now, latest file and folder, but of course you would use whatever folder is appropriate for you, and then a subfolder of raw data at all with that. I just try to leave it alone. So I say, okay, open. And now what it does is it looks at the folder and everything that's in it, including a bunch of files, a Word document. So it does have the data as well as other stuff in this folder. That's fine. So I click Transform Data. And then it opens the query editor window and it looks weird because instead of looking at a data file, we're actually looking at information about the files that are in the folder. So the first thing we want to do is we are only interested in Excel files, right? So I am going to filter to only include files that end in XLS. So this way I don't have to break my query if I exclude files that for some reason like Word documents get taken out. So I want to end with xlsx. Okay. And you can see those are filtered now. And what I can do here is I can change this. I can rename this and say filtered only Excel. And now you know what that step means, for example. And now the next thing I want to do is obscure. Whenever Excel does stuff, it makes temporary files. So we have to filter those out. So I'm going to add another filter and I'm going to say text filters does not begin with, and this is just the way Excel temporary files are named, if sometimes you can see them tilde, which is above your tab key, and then $sign, and then say OK. And we wouldn't be able to see it here because they're hidden, but sometimes they're in there and we wouldn't want that to break your query. Then what we want to do is sort by when they were added, right? We're only interested in the most recent file, Excel file, added to that folder. So I'm going to click here, Date Created, and sort descending. So the most recently created file is on top, and now I'm just going to keep the top row because we only want one file. So I'm going to say keep rows, keep top rows, 1, and then it just leaves us with this one file. Okay, so where's all our data in the file? And there's this little expansion button here, and if you click this expansion button, it opens up basically all of the content of that file, which in this case there's a table and a sheet, which is what the table's in, and say OK with the table because usually that's easiest to work with. And then it expands to include what we're looking for, which are all the column headers. And you could see that the way we've set up our field QC check, it just keeps adding to the Excel file. So eventually we'll have a lot here. So in order to avoid having any duplicates, what you have to do in any automated system, you're always going to have an index column, and you always want an index column. So the ID here is the form's index column, and no matter whether I've made 10,000 or 17, it's just going to keep adding an ID to the row. And this is where we want to remove duplicates. So to do this, select the ID or the index column and remove rows, which is under the Home tab, and then remove duplicates. And now, even though we don't have any duplicates here, in future, that eliminates duplicated rows, as long as the index column keeps appending 1 to every time a record is added. So now we have done the different steps. We've filtered out all files except Excel files. Then we filtered out hidden Excel files. Then we sorted the rows for the column date created, as you can see by this little sorting down arrow there. So the most recently created file in that folder is on top. Then we only kept that first row, so that's selecting the most recent Excel file. Then we expanded so that we were able to see all of the data. Then the final step is removing duplicates in the ID, which is the index column in this case. We close and load. Now I had previously saved this as a connection, so I only have the option once you've saved it as a table or a connection and you edit it, it makes you go outside the whole query to edit it again in terms of destination. So I have to say close and load, and it just went to a connection. So if I hover my cursor over this, and then you click on these ellipses, or if you right click it, which is probably more reliable, you right click the query and then load to, and then table. But if it's the first time you're doing it, you have the option table or connection, and then it populates this table. Now we're going to work further with this table. This is pretty boring here, but we need to calculate some statistics and produce this chart, right? So, well, how do we get there? Well, first of all, let's make sure that the system works. So I'm going to go back and open my phone, point my camera at this QR code, enter another row, and I'm going to make this the 15th of December in 2022, and then we're going to see this chart update, and we're going to go through the steps for that. Keep in mind that this only works when you're working off of a form that automatically has that all important index column, but there's different ways of handling whatever your data situation is too. Okay, so I've gone out into the field. I've done another QC check and recorded flow rate and done a leak test. I go back online. I log into my Outlook, which in this case is just ITEP 4 QUOPS, and that's all I do with this free Outlook account. And it opens up the email, but if you go navigate to the apps that are available and go to all apps and go to forms, this is where you download the Excel file. And so I could see 14 responses, so I just added another response, and I click on the responses tab and then open in Excel. And because I've set my downloads folder to be the raw data folder, I hope we'll find out. Here it is. Yep, raw data folder. Then it's automatically saved in there. And then I don't even need to open up that folder. I go back into this query that we've just been working on, and you can see that we have 13 rows of data because the data start in row 2. So let's see if I right click anywhere in this table and say refresh. Does it go and gather? Yes, it says 14 rows loaded, and the date of December 15th with excellent QC check results and a very low leak has been recorded. So in the next video, we'll show how to, in one step, make a chart so that it automatically then adds points to the chart.